And when people get emotional, they tend to panic and sell stocks. Somebody once said there's two basic emotions in the stock market: fear and greed. And rising interest rates are the fear emotion. Falling interest rates are the greed emotion. And they both are important. So basically, the market has been tanking, and I think you can think about how understanding emotion. Obviously, we're always going to be emotional. There's no way to stop ourselves from being emotional, and it's not a bad thing. It's a natural thing that we should be emotional. But the problem is that we often let emotions drive our behavior and fail to manage those emotions. And that's where we get into trouble in business and investing and many other places. So basically, one reaction to the falling stock market is to sell out of fear. And another is to say, wait a second, markets always go through these cycles, and my account might go down, but over the long term it'll go up. And if you take that point of view, it's less likely you're going to make a stupid mistake. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it could be really bad. I mean, who knows what the markets will bring. But the antidote to that, of course, is having a balanced policy, not just putting it in one thing like tech stocks or Bitcoin. I know a lot of students were interested in the past couple of years in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And I don't know what the ultimate merit of these things is, but the thing is about investing is that you shouldn't just put it in one thing. I have a lot of questions about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and that I'm not sure of what their intrinsic value is. Like, why is it that a particular cryptocurrency is worth a dime, much less Bitcoin was recently, not long ago, as high as 61,000. It's now down to 19,000, I believe. And why was it 61? Why was it 19? Is there any explanation other than the emotions of the people in the markets? And and somebody once said, when people are greedy, you should be fearful, and when people are fearful, you should be greedy. So I think the fact that people are getting fearful now probably means it's getting to be a better time to invest. Now, could the stock market fall to like 60% below what it is? The answer is yes, it could happen. And emotional markets are quite capable of things like that. But the thing is, if you keep a steady keel and you invest over the long term on a regular basis, those kinds of fluctuations don't bother you. Now, there are some people who claim they can time this sort of thing, and I'll buy at the bottom. But in practice, very, very few people can figure it out. Where does the emotion change? Where does the mood change of the general public? So on that note, let's talk a little bit about emotions in organizations. And first off, I will talk about affect, which is just a broad range of feelings. So there's a difference between that and emotions and moods. Affect is a broad range of feelings, and it can include both emotions and moods. So it goes two ways. Emotions, on the other hand, are intense, direct, discrete, short-lived feeling experiences that are often caused by a specific event. So, for example, the Fed raises interest rates and people get scared, they sell. Other people see the stock market fall and they become fearful too, and they sell as well. Moods are longer term than emotions, and they're less intense. So basically, affect can include both moods and emotions being more specific in time, and moods being more general, longer lived, and more diffuse, more spread out kind of. Positive affect, including both moods and emotions, can be positive and negative. Okay, so positive affect includes positive emotions and positive moods, and negative affect includes negative emotions. Positive moods, stuff like happiness, uh, um, feeling of well-being. Negative emotions include things like anger, anxiety, and stress. Basically, your book alludes to the connection between emotions and morals, ethics. But before I do that, I will take attendance for tonight. And when I call your name, please let me know if you're here. Minhas. Minhas. Muaz.
I'm here, Professor. I'm here. I'm always here.
Muaz.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I knew you were here. Okay. Dana.
I'm here. Good evening.
Dana. Karina.
I'm here, Professor.
Karina. Derek Borut. Derek. Xiaolin Chen.
I'm here, Professor.
Thank you, Xiaolin. Oops, somebody came. Let's let them in. Xiaolin Chen is here. Naisha Sherry.
Here.
Thank you. Tyler Daly. Tyler. Charles DeBross.
Here.
Thank you, Charles. Caitlin Dingman.
Here.
Thank you. Reham.
I'm here.
Thank you, Reham. Fatima Faria. Fatima. Okay, Josanne Frazier.
Here.
Okay. Raquel Gray.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Joseph. Brian. Gabrielle Huggins. Maimuna Kabir. Maimuna. Okay, Salma Kahanam. Salma. Catherine Kim.
Here.
Thank you. Clinton Kenyeti.
Here.
Thank you. Ilya Korolev.
Here, Professor.
Thank you. Billy Cryam. Billy? Christina Kuchenko? Christina? Shanice Lawson? Alex Lee?
Here.
Thank you. Ava Luck or Luke?
Here.
Thank you. Elizabeth Martinez?
Here, Professor.
Thank you. Kevin Matacastro?
Here, Professor.
Okay. Barbara Mendick?
I'm here, Professor.
Thank you. Leonie Miller?
Here, Professor.
Thank you. Jacqueline Mills? Sorry, Judy Mizrachi? Judy? Jessica Moon?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. Oriana Mora? Oriana?
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Hamza? Nadeem? Okay, let me get Kabir. Hamza Nadeem. Anthony Nagoyan.
Here.
Thank you. Diana Owusu.
Here, Professor.
Thank you, Diana. Sabita Pekayari. Sabita. Sapir Rafaelov. Sapir. Shakira Risher.
Here.
Thank you. Eliza Silks. Eliza. Anastasia Stepanova. Zixuan Su.
I'm here.
Oh, Zixuan is here. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nahima Sultana. Nahima. Rayvon Watson Taylor. Michael Williams. Bin Wu.
Here.
Steve Kaplan. Yangwei Wu.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Asen Yagladier.
I'm here.
Thank you. I'm going to read off the names of the people I marked absent. If you are here and I read off your name, please let me know. If I don't call your name, that's good. That means I marked you present. Minhaz Ahmed. Derek Borut. Fatima Faria.
Professor, you mark me absent or
What?
do you mark me here?
Muaz. Yeah, I said if I call you, and you're here, let me know. If I don't call you, it's good.
All right, thank you, Professor.
Gabriella
I'm gonna
Huggins.
bro, talk to me. Bro,
Gabriella
what's
Huggins.
up, bro? I'm going back there, bro. I'm gonna crack on our bed. Hey, you get him out of here.
Gabriella Huggins. Brian Joseph. Salma Kahanam. Billy Cryam. Shanice Lawson. Jacqueline Mills, Judy Mizrachi, Hamza Nadim, Sabita Pekiari, Sapir Rafailov, Eliza Silks, Anastasia Stepanova, Nahima Sultana, Ray Vaughn Watson Taylor, Michael Williams, and Steve Kaplan. Okay. All right, so I was talking about positive and negative affect.
Professor, I'm sorry. I don't think you called my name.
Yes, I have you present. So in other words, the names I just called for the people I had marked absent.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Wait, Professor, you didn't call my name either.
This is, what's your name?
Tyler Bailey.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Tyler Bailey.
I did, I got you. Tyler Daly, you're marked present.
Oh.
Okay, all right, going back to emotions, in the workplace, I was talking about the stock market and how emotions are often the driver of sharp fluctuations over the short term. It's less true over the long term. In the long term, reason prevails and people calm down, and then they realize that there's reason to be optimistic or pessimistic, and then things change. There's a close link between morals and emotions. This has always been controversial. The classic belief, if you go back to the ancient Greeks and into the Enlightenment, is that there's a rationality behind ethics, that reason and ethics are linked. I think that's less true of Plato, of Aristotle than Plato. Aristotle kind of connected like he thought of ethics as more of a balancing. And so, people have good ethics if they're able to balance competing concerns using practical judgment, using practical deliberation and judgment. And so this often has a lot to do with emotion, really. I mean, people have good balance and can balance concerns like fairness and the quest for money, the quest for fairness, the quest for justice, balance these through kind of an emotional process. So I would say Aristotle was somewhat open to the idea that morals are primarily emotional. But if you look at people like Descartes, and I would say to a degree Kant also, they kind of want to find a rational basis for emotions. And this idea was completely demolished in the late 18th century by a philosopher named David Hume. And Hume's thinking was really incredible. He saw the world as being really an illusion. Maybe in a way it's related to Vedantic philosophy also, that the world is an illusion and we don't really know anything. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but the world as we see it is just imaginary. It's just what we see, and it's not in any sense real. And for instance, he says we don't really have a self, and our self is just a collection of perceptions that really are illogical and have no real foundation. And he also said, treats cause and effect as largely a caprice of the human mind, that when we say something causes something else, all we really mean is that they're constantly conjoined, that they come together a lot. When it comes to ethics, Hume pretty much said ethics is nothing more, excuse me 1 second, I'm going to turn this air conditioner off to make a lot of noise, that ethics is nothing more than emotion. And he gives as an example a tree that drops an acorn on the ground, and then a little tree grows from the acorn, and it's like a baby tree of the mother tree. But then the baby tree grows and it's very strong, and it grows to be taller than the mother tree, and then it kills the mother tree because the mother tree can't get light, it only gets shade. So Hume said, do we consider that the baby tree to be immoral because it committed matricide, it killed its own mother? And do we consider that to be immoral? And he basically said no, because even though we consider that to be one of the worst crimes in human, activity, when we see a tree do it, we know that it's not a human, and so we don't. So it's not the crime itself. There's no real logic to why we feel that way. It's rather the abhorrence we feel, an emotional state rather than a logical state. Well, this is very controversial, and Kant tried to disprove him. But the thing is, the thing about this claim is that researchers in recent years have been concluding, based on empirical evidence, that morals basically are emotional, that it's not that they have no rational basis, but they're emotions that we feel in response to behavior that we deem to be inappropriate. So basically, when we talk about ethics, we talk about emotion. This creates some problems, though, which is that if we live in a society where emotions don't have any basis in a shared consensus, so there's no real, not only is there no real logic, but we just view ethics as emotion, then it becomes very difficult for people who disagree to live with each other. In other words, there's no way to prove you're right, there's no way to prove you're wrong. But if people feel abhorrence to a certain action or a certain belief or whatever, certain way of behaving, they have no more authority than the people they're abhorring, because it's just a matter of emotion. So you can't really say that there's some eternal truth to your moral beliefs. So basically, this creates a little bit of complexity for in a number of areas, which I think go beyond the what I want to what I think is relevant to the course. But basically, companies need to be aware of this also, because really, when you're dealing with ethical problems, you're trying to balance emotions. And to the extent that people become emotionally obsessed or emotionally shrill, it creates problems for the companies. And unfortunately, we live in a society which is polarized and increasingly polarized. And the result is that on most topics, there are going to be polar opposite points of view that are antagonistic. And a company that attempts to balance this is going to have a difficult time. So basically, what we've seen increasingly is like companies take positions on ESG.
Professor,
Yeah.
sorry to disturb.
no, no.
I came in late. I sent you in the chat that I was having the holiday dinner, so I couldn't join earlier. Did you might have
Okay,
taken
yeah, not a
attendance?
problem. I'll get you. It was a religious holiday.
It is. It is. It's today and tomorrow.
I didn't realize tonight was, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. So basically, the companies have to have this balancing act, I'm trying to say, and it's often difficult for them to do it. I think the solution that a lot of them took was to take the positions they were taught by their professors in college, which tends to be the left position. But basically now they're confronting a lot of people who disagree with them. And, I don't think they have a coherent response. They can't say they know better than their customers because there's no knowing in it. It's like, oh, I'm going to take this emotional position or I'm going to take that emotional position. And there's a really interesting book by a professor at NYU called The Righteous Mind. Actually know the guy, and his name just went out of my mind. The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. And this book, it's a very, very brilliant book. And what he says in there is that we can't reason about society independently of the assumptions we make. And the assumptions we make, we've arrived at in a variety of ways, but they're primarily moral preconceptions. So, we could do it because we've reasoned our way into them. That happened to me in my life. I reasoned myself into a certain set of ethical standards and political views, but most people just inherit it from their parents, or they hear it from their friends, or they believe what the TV tells them, or whatever whatever kind of half-assed method people arrive at their beliefs in the society. It could be from religion also. I mean, there's a lot of different sources, but whatever their preconceptions are, and it doesn't really matter what the position is because it's true for everybody, that when somebody starts with an ethical preconception, they then use all fact-finding and scientific evidence and quote unquote pursuit of truth to prove their point. So when any kind of political conversation is going to be purely about person A trying to prove their right to person B, and person B trying to prove their right to person A, and it's totally based on the emotional reverberations of their preconceptions. And they don't really want to know information that contradicts what their position is because they've already concluded their position. So what Jonathan says is that basically all political conversation is going to be an attempt to justify your own point of view. And it becomes, let's call it a pissing contest as to who can outscream the other or something along those lines. So basically what he's saying is that there's very little political discourse that's qualified to be called reason. And, both sides claim it. My next door neighbor, I just recently moved into a tiny apartment in Manhattan because my wife has always wanted to live in Manhattan. And my neighbor is an editor of a magazine called Reason, and their view is that the libertarian viewpoint is reasonable. In contrast, the Democrats say anyone who disagrees with them misunderstands science. It's our view is science, your view is moronic, and I'm sure there's similar things with the other, other views like the Trump people and so on. And so basically all of these people believe they have the one true answer, and they're not going to change. So basically emotion is a very powerful force, and I would say in many cases trumps reason. Now, to have reason come to play requires a very different mood. What reason really is doubt. So the ultimate reasonable person was probably David Hume, who I was just talking about. He said, I don't believe anything. I'm completely skeptical. I don't believe I exist. I don't believe there's such a thing as cause and effect. I don't believe that there's such a thing as fact. I don't think there's such a thing as personal identity, and on and on. And basically, all through his writing, he shows that. So what if you then accept the Humean position, what does that lead to? And it leads to a point of view called positivism, which is that, and it's stated by a number of researchers, but the most famous statements about what is science are by two. One is a historian and one is a philosopher. The historian's name is Thomas Kuhn, and the book he wrote is The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And I'll put this on the board. And what he basically says is that you can't really know anything. He doesn't totally dismiss the possibility of knowing, but he basically says science is a process of what he called paradigm creation and destruction. The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn. And he talks about the idea of paradigms that I left out an A there. And basically that scientists work on a paradigm and they narrowly try to disprove it. They don't try to prove it. They try to disprove it, according to Kuhn. That most scientists probably don't think that themselves, but he says that's what they're really doing. And as the evidence mounts that the paradigm is imperfect, contradictions appear, and then they become significant enough that a new kind of science evolves out of the old. And that, and the classic example of that is Einsteinian physics, which evolved out of Newtonian physics, and it doesn't really displace Newtonian physics, but it's much broader. And the other book by Popper is a little more specific, and I think overall it's a better statement of what science is. Kuhn's much better known, but Popper's book is also highly influential. And his book is called The Logic of Scientific Discovery. I read it. I took a sociological methods class with a famous sociologist named Peter Blau, and we read this book. That was like the main book of the course, and then we wrote a paper based on our understanding of the book. And basically, Popper says, it's heavily influenced, as all positivism is. It's heavily influenced by Hume's way of thinking, and so it basically says that science attempts to disprove hypotheses over time. We don't ever know what the truth is, but rather we attempt to falsify hypotheses. And so basically the falsification is done through experimentation. And so in the end, we don't really know what is true, but we only know what is not true. For instance, we know that the earth is not flat. We don't know, for instance, what we really look like to a molecule. That we don't know. And basically, the things we don't know far outweigh the things we know. So like claiming that you have a monopoly on science, or you're a scientist, so you're smarter than other people. This is exact reverse of what I see. This even famous economists make claims like this. Oh, well, I'm a famous economist, so I know more about the economy than anyone else. That's really not what science is. Claiming that you're Mr. Know-it-all is not science. What science is that you set aside your preconceptions and then you test them and accumulate the results of your testing. And it doesn't really lead to a conclusion. It leads to the creation of new theories, which are then tested further. So in a way, it's the exact reverse of emotion, and the exact reverse of moral belief. Science is not moral. And claiming that you have the scientifically proven moral view or the scientifically proven political view is really not what science is. All right, so basically getting back to emotions, the data show that people tend to have positive emotions. They tend to, when they're at rest, the net emotion that they're feeling are positive. Eastern European cultures tend to be more accepting of negative emotions than Latin American cultures, and different cultures have different preferences for the kinds of emotions that can be expressed. And cultures differ a little bit. Many organizations disapprove of emotional expression. So if you are, especially in a conservative corporation like a bank or a large corporation, you probably want to keep quiet about your feelings. You don't want to talk about your feelings. At the same time, if you seem really positive, positive emotions enhance job attitudes, enhance job engagement, enhance job performance, and enhance organizational citizenship behaviors. So basically, people who have positive emotions tend to do better in business, and they tend to do better in a company, and they tend to do better on the job market, and they tend to do better as entrepreneurs. So basically, positive emotions enhance attitudes, engagement, and performance. So what you want to do is develop outlooks that are positive, that reflect positive emotions. Where do emotions come from? First of all, personality. All right. Can you change that tendency a little? Yes, you can kind of force yourself to start thinking more and more positively and having more positive emotions. And that's probably a plan. So in other words, you do want to do that, and that does help you become successful. An important psychological trait that affects emotions is neuroticism, or emotionality. That's the N part of the Big Five personality traits. Neurotic people with high neuroticism have more intense emotions, and they're going to have more mood swings. the time of the day is going to affect your mood. So most people have stronger emotions. I think your book has the graph, and it varies by day. So it reaches a peak like before you go to sleep, and then it falls a lot, and then it builds again, it falls, and it builds again. So the time of day does affect your emotional state. Stress, very, very important in causing emotions. Obviously, if you're undergoing stress, like, and that's one thing to think about with 12 o'clock high, is how they manage this intensely negative environment and handle the stress that comes from being subjected to a difficult, dangerous form of work. The day of the week, obviously for a lot of people, Monday's the worst day, Friday's the best day. When I used to work 9 to 5, I always had that pattern. Social interactions, if you have positive social interactions, it's going to leave you with a more positive feeling. Sleep, very, very important. Most people nowadays are not getting enough sleep, and sleep does create positive emotions. The same thing with exercise, very, very important. Exercise builds your resiliency, and it improves your ability to withstand stress. So, it does pay to jog or go to the gym or whatever, because that does help you with stress management. And people who exercise are better able to handle it. One big area that's going to help with stress is the degree to which people are integrated into a community. So, for example, if you belong to a religious congregation or some kind of important club or even political activism or something of that type, you are going to be able to cope with stress a little better because you have friends in a community that you can share with. So like social resiliency, let's call it, can be built by developing contact with people, talking with others, being able to express yourself is going to also help you cope with stress. Now, the case study that I assigned tonight on the discussion board is the Smile Factory, and it's basically about the emotional labor that the Disneyland cast, whether they're Mickey Mouse or a sweeper or a concession person or someone who operates the rides, that the Disneyland cast goes through, and how they cope with it and the kind of social structure they've created given the environment that they're working in. Most of these are younger workers, college students who are working for the summer or for part-time, and basically they've created a whole system of emotion and a culture. And so a lot of this has to do with the importance of their seeming happiness. They have to express happiness to the clientele. And the Disney Corporation is not stupid in having them do this, because, I mean, that's why people go there. They want to have a good time. They want to be happy. And so the people that work there have to accommodate this, and they have to be trained to accommodate this. So basically, one of the things the case points out is that the employees typically give the organizationally desired emotions during the interpersonal transactions, which is how your book defines emotional labor, but they often are pretending. And of course, this can be stressful. So there's a difference between displayed emotions and felt emotions. Years ago, there was a famous social psychologist named Irving Goffman who wrote a book called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. And he talks about the presentation of self in everyday life. And he talks about how we act in different how we act in different ways depending on the, so he spells the Irving with an E that I forgot about. So basically it's Irving Goffman. It's a brilliant little book, and you may, well, it's obvious. Well, it's obvious because he wrote it. I mean, today we, this idea is just accepted, but basically he talks about how, in one context we're one way, in another context we're another way. And one of the points that Van Manen makes in the case study is that there was a one guy who had a lowly job as a sweeper or whatever, but he was going to be a doctor. He was on track to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and he started dating this girl who was Snow White. And in the Disney culture, in the Disneyland cast culture, Snow White is much higher prestige. But of course, in the real world, she was just a community college student, younger and probably not on the same track he was. But everybody in the cast was saying, why on earth would she date that guy? But in the broader society, the set of values placed him in a different position. But in the Disneyland set of values, she was placed in a much higher position because she was Snow White. And that's one of the most prestigious jobs in the cast. So basically, these kind of organizational culture variables often overlap and affect our emotional feelings, both about ourselves and about other people. And basically, one of the things the case study, I was talking about displayed emotions, one of the things the case study says is that they'll often make jokes about, they'll do the thing and then privately they'll tell their friends, oh, isn't that blah, 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 it's a big joke, but they won't say it publicly. So basically they have to in some way cope with the cognitive dissonance between what they really believe and what the way they behave in their role in the cast. The general rule is that employees under high or low rules do not perform as well as employees who have moderate display rules. So in other words, in a thing like Disneyland where there's very strict rules, that takes a toll on performance. And in the same token, where there's almost no rules, where people can do anything, they also don't perform as well. But where they do perform as well is where there are a moderate degree of display rules, how you're supposed to act in the corporation or in the organization. There's another important idea is surface acting. And this is directly related to what I was just talking about. We tend to hide our feelings and forgo emotional displays in response to the display rules. So we present ourselves, and this again gets back to Goffman, we present ourselves in a certain way in a context, and this is fundamental to how we interact in society. So you behave one way when you're in a religious congregation, you behave another way when you're out with your friends, and you behave a third way when you're at school with your professors. Okay, so each context creates different surface acting. And that contrasts with deep acting, where you do what I talked about in the beginning and actually try to change your emotions based on the display rules. Now, does that happen in real life? I worked for Johnson & Johnson for 2.5 years. And basically, I would say that J&J had a very intense corporate culture. Okay, the display rules were relatively strong, although they were flexible. And the basic thing was that if you did not only adopt the deep acting approach, where you actually try to modify your feelings based on the display rules, but if you did not actually sort of adjust to their way of life and adjust your feelings so that you felt comfortable in this highly conformist, highly structured corporate environment, you could not survive there. All right, you would not be able to take it. It was, the conformity pressure was very tough, and you expected to fit in and do what they wanted and be a certain way. And if you weren't that way, you would leave after a couple of years. It was not, they did not want people who were individualists. All right, now an important idea is effective event theory. And this idea is that employees react emotionally to things that happen to them at work, and then change their attitudes and behaviors based on these traumatic events. So, basically your boss does something to you. When I first got to J&J, for example, they told me I was working for one person, and then I got there and I found out I was working for someone else. I got really annoyed about it. I felt like they had lied to me, and I never really liked it there from then on. That would be an example of this. So basically, effective events theory says that certain powerful events cause employee emotional reactions, which in turn cause ongoing attitudes and behaviors. And so if companies aren't careful about how they create these emotional attitudes, you are going to influence people one way or the other. Now, emotional intelligence, the idea that you can manage cues, that you can understand your own and other people's emotional states, the ability to detect and manage emotional cues and information is extremely important. It's important as ability, it's important as IQ, it's important as any of the skills that you learn in school. And hopefully you learn a little bit about emotional intelligence in school. There probably aren't that many classes, but courses like this one teach you a bit. And basically, emotional intelligence is very, very important to success in the business world. 59% of managers said that they would not hire someone who had high mental ability but did not have a decent emotional intelligence. Okay, so emotional intelligence is very, very important. Warren Buffett, I saw Warren Buffett give a talk, and he said in the talk that when he took out, he at one time was running an investment bank that no longer exists called Salomon Brothers. And it was at the time a very important investment bank. It was close to going bankrupt. And he was asked to take it over to bring it back to financial health. So he gave his time to do that. I don't know whatever they paid him, it couldn't have been adequate to his, his economic worth. But in any way, he talked about that experience that for a number of months he ran Salomon Brothers. And he said in the talk that he interviewed a CEO to eventually replace him. I mean, the idea wasn't that he would do that forever. It was just the Fed had asked him to do it for a few months. And, he said when he interviewed the people, he just assumed that they had high IQs. He didn't really care whether one was a little smarter or not. He said they're all smart enough to better than do the job. And that's not really what affects performance at that level. That they're already so far above the mean that, it's not really important. What he cared about was how selfless they were, how respectful and humble and emotionally intelligent they were. That was far more important to him, he said, than, did they know how to do a given financial strategy? He had no doubt that they could all do it. And that's true at every level. You need to have very good emotional intelligence to have good interpersonal skills, and you need to have good interpersonal skills to have a successful career. So basically, the fundamental thing that you should get out of this talk tonight is the importance of building emotional intelligence. And how do you do that? You do a little reading, you think about it. You think about how to manage your emotions. You learn about how to moderate and contain yourself, not to express emotions, and to understand other people's emotions. Very, very important. Several studies suggest that emotional intelligence plays an important role in predicting job attitudes and job performance. It's related to teamwork effectiveness and organizational citizenship behavior, which means organizational citizenship behavior just means doing the things that the company needs, but go above and beyond your job description. So you do more than you're expected to. So, they need help to set up an event, you volunteer. Two employees are having a conflict, you help resolve it. Somebody's unhappy with their office, you offer your office to them. Most people aren't saints, but the more people do stuff like that, and you could probably think of many examples of it, encouraging ethical behavior, it's helping discuss quality issues above and beyond. Basically, people with high emotional intelligence will tend to be more adept at organizational citizenship behavior. People with emotional intelligence are going to be happy. They're going to be popular. Can you test EI? Can you test emotional intelligence? Absolutely not. Can you test ethics? Absolutely not. I think it's ridiculous. There's a guy named Kohlberg. He died years ago. I'm using the present literary present tense. And basically, Lawrence Kohlberg created this idea that you can mature morally the way a child matures cognitively, mentally. And he based this moral theory on the psychologist Piaget developing stages of mental development. And what he claimed is that he could test people and determine how morally mature they are. And I actually use that test in my Principles of Management class. It's part of the Wetton and Cameron textbook, which is very good. Otherwise, I don't think much of Kohlberg, though. But basically, what he says in his book, he found that philosophy students are more ethical than business students. So, I said to myself, I mean, no one's that stupid. It's just astonishing to me someone would come up with a finding like that. So in other words, philosophy students are people who study the right answer to the test. Their courses have to do with like the material he structured his stages of maturity on. So they know the right answers because they studied it abstractly. So when they're asked these questions and they know it's a test to test their morality, they give the right answer. It's not very hard to do. If you've had a little bit of philosophy, you know what he's poking at in those tests. Whereas the business students are not out to prove that they're the most ethical ones in the world. They obey the law. They're decent people. They're not trying to be saints. They're trying to get a good job. And so basically, it's going to come out biased by the preconceptions of the majors and the interests and what they're taught. And the same is true of any test that claims to test based on ethics, that you can't really test people's ethics. You can test things like integrity, and that means that you can get people to say that they're willing to steal, for example, if you set up the question right. And people will differ on things like that. And you can also, this guy, Paul Babiak and Robert Hare, these two guys, claim they can test for psychopathy, and they set up a psychopath test, but that's different. That's really different from testing for broad-based morality. And, your book basically says similarly about EI, that it's not that practical to test it and so use it as a employment selection vehicle. That's why it's not used as much. But that said, when you go on a job interview, if you express anything negative or you seem like a negative person, they will drop you like a hot potato. Okay, so basically you should never express negative emotions in a job interview. Okay, and that's a sign of a negative, mindset, a negative personality. Now, can emotional intelligence be trained? And the answer is yes. All right, so you can basically train people to become more adept at reading other people's emotions, understanding their own emotions, understanding how to react to emotions. Those kinds of things can be trained and improved. But can you give someone a written test? Probably not. However, you can observe job applicants, and that's a big difference between giving them a written test, because you can see how they operate in a practical setting. So there are at least two ways to do that. Number one, what you can do is what's called an assessment center. When I teach HR, I go over this material also. An assessment center is where you invite the applicants, or maybe several of the applicants at once, into a room with a one-way window. They see a mirror. You've got psychologists and a manager, maybe two psychologists and two managers standing on the other end of the mirror, and they're watching the applicants. And you give them assignments. You give them, for example, a sales call, and you give them a meeting, and you watch how they interact with the other people. And basically, they don't totally know what you're looking for. And so it'll be hard for them to hide their true selves. Okay, so assessment centers, the idea of statistical validity is that you can correlate the scores with their actual job performance based on supervisor ratings or actual output if they're a salesperson or something. And what you find is that assessment centers do have a significant predictive ability of job performance. So in other words, if they can weed out, based on these displays of emotional behavior, they can weed out some of the worst ones, then there is an ability to improve hires. Second of all, the second way that you can test for emotions if you're running a company is to use what's called job tryouts. So job tryouts is the same idea as if you give an actor a screen test, or you have a baseball player play in the minor leagues before they play in the major leagues. That's a good job tryout. So you see how they do in the minors, and then if they're good, they get promoted. A lot of the Japanese companies use job tryouts as a selection method, less so in the US. We don't spend as much time on job tryouts. In the military, they use them. So, for example, to get into the special forces and, like the Army Rangers or the Navy SEALs, that sort of thing, they you go through, and the Marines do this too, you go through an intensive training period and they see how people react and they can weed you out. Part of that is probably interpersonal interaction. I don't know a lot about that stuff, but part of it is probably interpersonal interaction. I can tell you, I think I mentioned this already, I can tell you that in the military, there's considerable personality-based selection. I've given tests to military people and they definitely fit, their jobs emotionally, much more than in other walks of life. Okay, so basically, another idea. And speaking of this, I just saw a little note I made that Air Force personnel with high emotional intelligence were almost 3 times more successful than Air Force personnel with low emotional intelligence. So obviously, they're going to encourage that and pick the ones with the best EI. Now, what in 12 o'clock high, this was before they understood emotional intelligence, and so basically they don't generally have high emotional intelligence. They have a scheme called maximum effort, and basically maximum effort is whoever can put up with hell and withstand it gets to continue to lead the unit. And that's really not the best way to do it. Rather, what they should have been able to do, and of course they didn't know this, this is decades ago, was select people based on their ability to withstand stress. And you can, as I said, you can test for neuroticism and use other mechanisms to test, use assessment centers. The assessment center was actually invented in World War II in connection with the spy unit. The predecessor of the CIA invented assessment centers to test how people applicants would withstand interrogation if they were caught and things like that. But you can use them for business purposes as well. So basically, people who have a lot of neuroticism are going to have trouble regulating their emotions. And so their emotional regulation is going to be worse. Diversity is associated with greater emotional regulation. People are conscious of differences. They're worried about hurting other people's feelings. So they become more regulated emotionally. They regulate their emotions. So the idea behind emotional regulation is to identify and modify your emotions so that you fit in the organization and you do the things that the organization wants you to do. People who are good at it are going to be good at certain jobs, one of which is obviously the Disney cast. People who are good at emotional regulation are going to be good at looking for a job. So if you can handle your emotions, you're going to be better at finding a job. And as I said, one of the most important things in looking for a job is to avoid expressing negative emotion. Okay. The downside of emotional regulation is exhaustion. It's a similar effect of like if you go through severe stress without understanding it and you don't manage it properly. And this is what we see in the movie. So it's basically exhaustion. It can have the worse effects than emotion because you may actually end up focusing on the emotion more. Suppressing emotions is usually ineffective. One thing that works in managing emotion is reframing. reframing, the glass isn't half empty, it's half full. I have a 50% chance of living, not I have a 50% chance of dying. So basically, you want to refocus things so that you're thinking positively. Another thing that works, I already mentioned, is social sharing. That when you openly express your emotions to friends or to people in your network, you can help regulate them by venting. So basically, you want friends who are good listeners. People with positive emotions have better motivation levels. It's in companies' interest to encourage positive emotions. As well, people who have positive emotions tend to give those emotions to others. So there's something called emotional contagion, like a disease, except it's not a disease. Emotional contagion, that if you have positive emotions, you spread them to other people, and people with positive emotions tend to give better service. So you want to encourage positive emotions in the service environment. Things like anger usually are ineffective. Envy, the negative emotions, they result in maliciousness. It causes difficulty in taking on other people's point of views. And also there's a huge safety issue. Positive thinking, positive emotional states are associated with lower injury rates in the workplace. Okay. Now, for the rest of tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit more about writing. And there's a course document in the course documents section of Blackboard called the term paper pre-submission checklist. And I'd like you to look at that and review it. I'm going to go over a little bit right now about it. Let's go out of this thing, out of the whiteboard. And I will go into, I will share again, screen share if I can find that document. That's not it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so let me screen share again. Where is that? Share screen. Okay. All right. So let me get rid of this. All right. So I hope you can all see this document here. It's a Word document. One big issue, it's not everybody, but I get every semester at least 5 or 6 people who use "in regards to" or "with regards to," and that's wrong. Okay, the right phrase is "with regard to." You can also say "in regard to," "as regards," okay, and "regarding." So you can say "as regards the book I read," or "with regard to the book I read," or "in regard to the book I read." You shouldn't say "in regards to the book I read." All right, so you want to get away from that. Okay, I talked last time about semicolons, but just to review, semicolons link 2 main clauses. So basically, if you have 2 main clauses, like oh, I can't write on this. 2 main clauses, like the ball is hard, it bounces fast. You can join those 2 main clauses with a semicolon. The ball is hard, semicolon, it bounces fast. I hope you all know what semicolons are. I talked about it last time, but just to refresh your memory, let me get out of this. I'll get into the whiteboard for a second. Okay, so a semicolon is this. And basically, its purpose is to join two main clauses or to join lists with commas as the elements of the list. So if you say something like, I lived in New York, Los Angeles, comma, California, and Willemstad, Curacao. Okay, so you, I didn't finish writing Curacao before the thing jumped away from me. Let's see if I can do that. So basically, well, you have the idea. So basically, you use the semicolons because it would be confusing to join these elements with commas. If just one of the elements has a comma in it, it's okay to use the semicolon. The other thing semicolons are used for is to join two main clauses. So if you say, I like milk, I drink it with gusto. Okay, that the I should be capitalized. That was just a typo. What the hell? Okay, I like milk, I drink it with gusto. You're joining two main clauses, two clauses that contain a verb that don't contain a conjunction. These main clauses are joined by semicolon. Okay, I talked about that last time. Okay. Okay. Uses and misuses of wood. Basically, a lot of people at Brooklyn College use would in place of is. All right. So, for example, you don't say something like, I am a professor. I'm sorry, you don't say something like, I would be a professor. You say, I am a professor, right? I have on this document a couple of websites that list out the uses of would, and I suggest you read them, and so you have a clear idea of how to use would. A lot of people misuse it. Basically, the uses of would include, and I have them down here as the past tense of will. So you said you would help me, but then you didn't. Okay. Or you said you would let me drive your Lamborghini, but you didn't. Okay. So basically the past tense of will. It also is for a polite request or a polite or a expression of a wish. So you say, I would like to be a farmer. I would please like a Lamborghini, or a polite request. I would like the spinach, please. Would you please pass the spinach? Would is also used to describe a repeated action in the past. When I was young, I would walk 9 miles to school. After school, I would chop wood. That's fine. To express an unreal situation. This is the chief use of would. Owning a Lamborghini would let me drive fast. Okay, you don't really own a Lamborghini, and the would says that. So this is my problem with the use of would. When you talk about your future or when you talk about your present, you give an air of unreality by using the word would. It's as though everything is a wish. There's nothing real. But in fact, I mean, a lot of things are real, and your future should be couched in that it's real. So you should say will, not would. You say, I will be an accountant. You can also use would, and you do use would for unreal conditionals. So it's the consequent where the past tense is the condition, and the would phrase is the consequence. If I were a millionaire, I would drive a Lamborghini. Okay, so basically you're talking about an unreal situation. If I were a millionaire, this is like the subjunctive in English. If I were a millionaire, I would drive a Lamborghini. Okay, and there's different kinds of conditionals: the first, second, and third. 0, first, second, and third. If you read the handout, you'll see we're kind of short on time, and I don't really see the need to go over those just yet. Check certain things before you hand in a paper. For example, words like very, really, quite are all unnecessary. Avoid using the first person as a modifier. The book, in my opinion, is helpful. Of course, it's in your opinion, otherwise you wouldn't be expressing it. So you can leave out in my opinion. It's just excess baggage. I was talking to my HR class this afternoon, and I said to them, you do not write the way you talk. Writing and talking are two different things. And they kept saying, why? Well, when you talk, you can't edit. So you inject a lot of garbage words that don't really add much, but because your mind works a lot quicker than your voice, you're kind of giving yourself a little time to plan your next statement. Basically, those kind of garbage words should be excised from writing. You want clean, crisp writing with simple, clear sentences. So you don't use words like very, really, quite, totally, extremely. A lot of adverbs are just excess. I'm not saying never to use adverbs, but these empty adverbs that don't add much meaning, just omit them. You don't need them. Also, make sure that your verb tenses are consistent. This is a very big problem. I have a lot of students who they write in the present tense, then they're suddenly in the past tense, then it goes back to the present. If you write about a literary work, you should be writing in the present tense. Okay, if you prefer the past tense, it's okay, but then be consistent. Don't suddenly jump to the present tense. So if you're writing about the contents of a literary work, you could say, in his classic philosophy book, The Critique of Pure Reason, Immanuel Kant says that the structures of our mind define reality. Okay, so basically you use the present tense when you're talking about Kant died 200 odd years ago, but we still use the present tense because his works are immortal. Okay, now if you talk about his biography, that's a different story. When you talk about the literary work itself, the content of the work, you use the present tense. When you talk about Kant's life, if you talk about George Washington rode a white horse, you don't say George Washington rides a white horse. You don't say Kant took a walk every afternoon. I'm sorry, you don't say Kant takes a walk every afternoon. You say Kant took a walk every afternoon. So basically, you want to be consistent in your use of tense. I recommend when you write about the contents of a book or a movie like 12 O'Clock High, use the present tense in talking about the contents of the movie. If you want to talk about director Henry King and his life, then you use the past tense. Okay, so basically, capitalize sparingly. Okay, only capitalize words that require capitalization. Look at grammarbook.com, look at, if you have access to it, the Chicago Manual of Style, and look at the capitalization rules. Follow that. I use as my guide the Chicago Manual of Style. So if you want to use that, you can try. Try. It's a little bit advanced for undergraduates, but if you want to use it, go ahead. You do not need to capitalize job titles. For example, I am a college professor. I don't capitalize college professor or professor. Those are lowercase. If you say I am a history major, history is lowercase. Okay, so you want to use capitals sparingly. Capitals should be used for proper names or proper nouns. So for example, if the name of a building, the name of a state, your own name, the name of a person, these are all capitalized. The name of a holiday, the name of religion, all of these things are capitalized. Proper names are capitalized. General nouns are not capitalized. In German, they're capitalized, not in English. So basically, if you talk about a cat, I have a cat. The cat's name, cat is lowercase, is Sam. Sam is uppercase, cats is lowercase. All right. So when you use ordinary nouns, you do not capitalize them, even when you refer to an actual person. And there's a lot more rules. I can't talk about them all. We only have a couple minutes left. So, but basically read this handbook, and I'll get back to it next week. We'll talk a little bit more. The issue of restrictive and non-restrictive clauses and phrases requires a full discussion. So I'll talk about that next time. All right. Now, before you go, is there anyone who came late whose name did not hear their name called?
Professor, I was late. Did you make me present?
Who is this?
It's Nahima
Nahima. What's your last name?
Sultana.
Okay. All right. I marked you. Please come on time though. Okay, I'm gonna mark you L for late, but please come on time. Who else?
Professor.
I was here, Gabrielle Huggins.
Okay, Gabrielle. Okay, you too. Okay,
And me too. Sorry. My name is Fatima Faria.
great, Fatima. I got you too. Okay, anyone else?
Just want to make sure you got me from earlier, Sapira Failov.
I'm very sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that you got me earlier. I was the one who came in late because of the holiday dinner. Sapira Failov.
What's the last name again? I'm still having trouble hearing.
Rafaelov, R-A.
Rafaela. Okay, yeah, I have you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay. All right. So in that case, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm here. I know we don't get to meet in person a lot or at all. So if you have any questions, it's be like an office hour thing. Feel free to ask away.
Oh yeah,
Question,
Professor, I'm gonna ask you something.
please.
So about the emotional dissonance and whatever, isn't it easy for people to basically keep their feelings bottled in anyway, considering that the college students that I meet nowadays, they all seem like they have problems opening their shell and like talking to other people.
Well, that's, it's not healthy though. You're right. A lot of people do it. Why do you think they hide their emotions? I was unaware of that. I never heard this before. why are today's college students bottling up their emotions?
I think they're afraid of being judged, honestly. I mean, I am.
Like people are so judgmental in so many ways nowadays that they're afraid to tell the truth of what they think.
Exactly.
That's too bad. I don't know what the antidote to that is. Uh, I don't think the schools do a good job of encouraging tolerance of alternative views. And I think, instead of respecting students, we tend to, there's a lot of like sort of more forcible stuff. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what to tell you about that, but it's healthy. Maybe you could get a group of friends together and try talking more openly together and see if you can all, break the shell.
It's gonna be time consuming, but I mean, I guess it's a fun idea.
I think part of the problem is also like a lot of the students at Brooklyn work full time. And so to do stuff like that is hard because like if they work even half time and go to school half time, it's like they're so busy that it's hard to find time to do anything. And I think they're constantly coping with stress. If you're under stress, you're less likely to be open.
Yeah, I agree, but it only takes like 30 seconds to say hello to a random stranger, like, hello, how was your day, stranger? Like, that is the first step, opening a door, countless possibilities, my opinion.
Very good point. Well, I think if you keep doing it, and you can live with a little rejection, you'll meet people that way, and maybe you'll start to find some friends and start a group, and then start a whole movement of people being more open. How about that?
That does sound nice, yeah.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll think about that. I didn't know. I know, like, I think one thing also, like, people are so hooked into their cell phones now. It's like the smartphones dominate people's minds. I'm talking about interesting stuff in class, and I see the students on the cell phone. They can't tear away from it. It's not, they just can't focus on a conversation. It's the cell phone is everything. That might be part of it too.
Yeah, I agree. The cell phone is like such a magical device, but at the same time, it's led part of humanity into, I don't know, a more closed personality, more
Yeah,
isolated.
yeah, yeah. I think something's got to be done about that. It's gone too far. I think a lot of people are, it's like like you're mentally distracted all the time. It's like you can't tear yourself away from the cell phone. I signed that movie, The Social Dilemma, and Jonathan's in that movie. I mentioned Jonathan Haidt earlier. He's talking about how the teenagers are often adversely affected by social media. And it's related. People become so fixated on this stuff, they lose perspective. And how can you be emotionally intelligent if your only interaction is with a computer screen?
I agree, I agree.
So that's too bad. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's always a difficult age, the college age, a little younger and a little older. It's a tough age. It's a lot of changes going on in your life, and it's hard to meet new people. And just as soon as you feel like you meet people, they disappear. They get a job somewhere else, and it's often a hard time. But I think the more open, the more you talk to people, that you're doing the right thing there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bye, Professor.
Great. See you next time. Any other questions, comments? Points, anything? No? Anything? Anybody? What do you get? You got,
I sent a message.
okay, let me see. I was having internet issues. Okay. Kabir. Okay, I had Kabir, Raphaelov, Mills, let me see. Okay, Mills was here. All right. Uh, Lisbeth Martinez was here. Christine Kachenko. Okay. Okay. Which message was yours, Karina? I don't see it. Karina?
It was a private message.
Private message. Oh, here. I don't see it. Strange. Do you want to get offline and talk to me?
Possibly, but also, did you try clicking my name in the chat box, maybe?
Oh, let me try that.
Mm.
More. Hold on. Chat. Okay, let's try. No, I don't see you.
Okay,
I don't see the message. I'm sorry.
no
I'm
problem.
doing something wrong. Oh, here it is. Okay, hold on. Okay, you're asking me to extend the discussion board until Tuesday? Okay, I will do that. I'll email people. Okay,
Thank you very much, Professor.
you're welcome. Okay, other questions?
Have a good night.
You too, Karina. Any other questions? If not, I will hang up. If so, please ask or forever hold your peace. Anyone? All right.